peek behind the curtain of the Softly Training Lab with the Softly Performance podcast. The pinnacle of human performance is out there, and we intend to find it.
Welcome to the next episode of the Softly Performance podcast. I was wondering if we should record how we were opening prior to recording, but today it's myself, Coach G, and we've got Coach Matt with us. Brent is out of pocket, but Matt's saying that this is good content to tell us a little bit about the other side of the coin, people who don't have to worry about military first responder as a career choice. So this past, let's say, weekend, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's now Wednesday, I was sent by a company that will remain unnamed because I'm not sure about legal stuff, but they hired me on as a subject matter expert to run a few workshops down at this place called Canyon Ranch. Now, Canyon Ranch, I had no idea, I knew that these kinds of places existed, but again, I'm not some ultra rich, ultra elite millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire potentially, where this is like top of mind as a place to stay. It's way too fucking expensive. So to put things in perspective, when I was asked to go here and would you like to stay? We'll put you up for a night. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. And it costs $1,800 a night, at least for this specific event. I'm not even going to bother with looking up, other times of year to find out how much it is, because I suspect it's also still around that price point. And I'm certain that for some of these people, well, put it this way, when you are able to just fucking drop dough on $1,800 a night without question, I don't think you're thinking, oh, should I stay 3 days or 4? I think it's just...
I was going to say, to put it into context, both G and I were NCOs.
Yeah,
so
okay,
this is a whole different universe, let alone different world.
Yeah, and the longer I stayed there, the less comfortable I got because these were not my people. And I bring this up because this is wellness. It is a world-renowned wellness resort. From what I recall, when I looked this place up, it's like one of the top 3, top 5 in the world. And it's in Tucson, Arizona. And again, Matt and I probably wouldn't be concerned with staying in a place like this. Here I am with facial hair, a little rough around the edges. And I will say this, I ran 3 workshops when I was there and I trained 1 man. And I don't even bother asking what they do for a living. What I did observe, which I thought was interesting, 0 people in the healthcare space there.
As in attendees or as in staff? As in
attendees, correct.
Okay.
So what I was going to assume that there would be some kind of ortho, some kind of, some kind of surgeon, some kind of doctor, 0. So I don't know why the lack of intersection there, because in my mind, I know doctors are overworked, but in my mind, I thought, they have the disposable income. But these people...
Is this kind of next tier?
Next tier. They're like, oh, you work?
People like Brent.
And I remember the last day, the morning of, before my next class, the final class, I was at this, so I'll give you a great example, okay? If you're in Arizona and I told you, hey, this guy over here is wearing a cowboy hat, blue jeans and boots. If you're in Arizona, and Matt, I know for you kind of have this idea in your mind of oh, this is a guy that works, he's in the cattle or the livestock industry. He works for his money. Well, at Canyon Ranch, and I'm not denigrating Canyon Ranch, they had this thing set up, cowboy coffee. And the people helping were all wearing cowboy outfits, not cowboys. Okay. You know what I mean? So they're way too clean.
I'm thinking of when you say that, I'm thinking of brewing coffee in a sock.
Oh, so what they did is they had this super nice, super clean fire, and they had big pots warming up over it. And I know for the people there, oh, this is so charming. And I'm like, you kind of live this. This is my life. That's normal for me.
Yeah.
And I hear this group of ladies talking about I was like, I'm not going to listen to this. I heard her say, have you heard my Ferrari story? It's I'm not going to fucking bother. It was her Ferrari. I picked up that much. But anyway, I said hi to those women because I also heard them mention the class coming up. I'm like, oh, I'm teaching that. And there was this interstitial, for a flash moment where oh, the help is talking to me. That's the vibe I was getting. So anyway.
Yeah. So I'm really keen to hear more about this. This is, like I said, this is kind of this side of strength and conditioning, human performance is the polar opposite of, I imagine you as well, but why I kind of was interested in doing this as a career from very, very early. But the question I have for this is bearing in mind your recent past of tier 1 tactical NFL prospects, NFL legends, and pro sport legends in some cases. So obviously you've worked and you've dealt with egos and with people who, entitlement's the wrong word, with people who kind of know what they want. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
How did you kind of approach like working with this kind of clientele?
Oh, dude, that's I'm glad we talked about this because this is very alien. If I say, hey, we got to fucking push hard through this, there's this understanding in the back, like for an athlete, let's say I'm working with you, you understand that you're at competition with others. You know, if you play a sport, professional sports. So like that is driving you, the urge to win. Whereas here with this wellness thing, it wasn't about the urge to win. They already did. They don't have these issues, so to speak. And I'm not saying issues like it's dysfunctional. I just mean like that part of your psyche, that competitive edge. It's not, you've helped for, I know, I'm not going to fucking ask because then, you know, they probably sequester me into some dark fucking cave and you never hear back from me. My organs will get harvested. But I'm not going to ask, hey, did you inherit this wealth? You know, like there was just that notion of like, I wonder how many of you actually fucking grinded, you know, to get to this point.
Surprising.
That mindset, again.
I was kind of thinking you were going to go the other way and say they're all like turbo competitive because that's kind of that's really interesting. So again, preconceived notions. I would have gone in. I would have gone in playing on that.
The 3 workshops that I ran, 99. Again, I said this, I think before the record, I only trained 1 man. The rest were women. Okay. And I also think it's about the intent. And I'm trying to be careful as far as, I want to say OPSEC. See, that's a word they wouldn't know, operational security. But the workshop remember I said wellness resort. So you're already going in with a certain frame of mind. You're not going in there to like, I'm going to increase my fucking 5K time. That's not where they're there. So I was also getting that. Yeah, exactly. All right, ladies, today we're going to work on bench press technique. I would lose everyone. So for them, it was very much, if I could be reductive, I would say that they wanted to feel, the word empowered comes to mind. And when I say that, I mean like, not when I say empowered to a tactical audience or an athlete, I'm dealing with knee pain. I have agency. I can control this. For them, it's about, I want to feel centered and I want to feel good.
Okay.
Not from a hedonist standpoint, like an excess thing. It's more about, that's why they're there. If I said, hey, today, well, for example, they had like sound bowl therapy. Okay. And I don't know and I know for a significant part of the people listening to this, like, why?
Well, just listen to maybe episodes from, say, 5-6 years ago when George was on.
Yeah.
You'll get up on.
He would have been at home, man. And he probably, and I'm not saying I didn't have any. So, and then I need to say this as well. Like I've worked a great deal with a number of executives at a very high level, C-suite executives. But maybe it's like the space that I'm in. Most of them, Matt, to your point, are hyper competitive. They're locked in. They want to push, but this was different. This was very different.
So what do people, again, I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. I'm just trying to
No. Let's take the conversation where it goes.
Like what are people, so say I'm Mr. Turbo Wealthy, I'm interested in doing this. Is this something, I know you talked off air about how like people can buy places there, like buy accommodation there. But what I was going to ask is like, what are they going for? Are they going for like a 2-week spa refresh kind of thing? Are they going for like a boot camp fitness?
Okay, I dig that.
Or are they there all the time? Do they live there? Like, what's the kind of vibe?
I think it's all of the above. So you have people. So if I'm only a multimillionaire, then I'm only going to stay there for a little bit of time, right? So they have different rooms, and of course, it's unlike any other place I've ever seen. It's not like a hotel where there's this like busy vibe to it, and there's a lot going on. One thing I was really impressed with was, even though like you would be close to the center of where it's not called the lobby. It's called the clubhouse. But no matter where you were on the grounds, it felt private, which I was really impressed with. They like worked really hard on the landscaping to kind of help it feel like this was my own place. I was really impressed with that because it's deceptive. And I've never, and I'm saying this, like I've stayed all over the world. I've been in all kinds of places. I've never been in a place like that where it was designed so thoughtfully. Now, the consequence, fucking hard to know where you were. It was fucking weird. Yeah. Like the last night, the first night I stayed there, I'm walking down, like heading towards the casitas. That's a whole nother thing where I'm staying. And I just felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Yeah. Like it was illegal. Yeah.
Like 6-digit grid refs later on.
Yeah, man. It was weird. Now as far as who is going and what is their goal, it was a, let's say, aesthetics focused experience. So hence why I only trained one man. And there's a heavy and hard focus on beauty. And I mean that literally. So like they had like people with red light therapy for your face. So multiple, or shift wave, which for every listener, I encourage you to seek out shift wave.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
Oh my God, dude. Yeah. You know what? I got to have, they have tactical, the tactical branch, but I got to have them on the podcast. I think that machine is really underrated. Now, for the machine.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, for these people, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
There was also a piece of equipment that I was really impressed with, far more accessible for you and me, called the Ohm lamp. That thing was fucking sick. So maybe I'll have them on too.
Yeah.
But
Can you give us a bit of a spoiler? What are those two things?
Yeah. Well, yeah. You can look it up now. They're going to be they're taking reservations now. So I want you to imagine, the wearable devices that we all have access to with these sensors that detect not blood pressure that's coming, but rather your heart rate and HRV, etc. They have a little pod that you place. So it fits, it's like half the size of a hockey puck, maybe a little smaller than that. And you hold that in your hand. That's where the sensor is. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that sensor is tied in with
shift wave, or is this the other one?
This is the Ohm lamp. So the lamp. And imagine a cylinder that this little sensor sits on top of. I pick that up and I put it in my hand. And then now it's reading my heart rate. Okay. That heart rate and HRV is tied in with the lamp. That lamp will take me through a series of breathing exercises, and I'm trying to reach, they call it a state of resonance. Okay. Where you're getting high deltas and peaks. So like lots of oscillation. Yeah. That was how I interpreted it. And it will let you know immediately, visually, if you did that or not through the light, because the light is shifting around. It's fucking dope.
There's some cool neuro stuff in there.
Yeah,
I like that.
Man. Yeah, it's neurofeedback. And what I love, because I asked him, like, well, this data that you guys are collecting through the heart rate, I mean, how accurate is that? Because it's only like for, 3 to 5 minutes a day. Like, how valuable is that? Well, because what I love about it is very ingenious. They thought very hard about this. It sits on a lamp. So you can and you hold it in your hand. So you can have a bigger sensor that collects far more data than a wrist-based device that you have to charge every now and then. Right. Yeah. So they don't have to worry about the same battery issues that you would if I was wearing this on my wrist. So you get far more fidelity, and you can see how you would be generally more consistent, right? Yeah. Over time. Yeah. If I'm always doing this in the morning or always doing this at night, eventually you'll get a large enough data set. So that was one thing that I was really interested in. So I'm going to be paying attention to them. I'm wondering, you know what? I'll have them on the podcast because I think there's probably a discussion on wearable technology and what the technology itself. Because I was talking to one of the, he wasn't a founder, but he was a psychologist that was brought on, like number 2, to help develop this device. And apparently he's got a really great rep in the space. Of course, I don't forgot his name already, Jay or something like that. But work with the Atlanta Braves and a number of other elite level sport. But anyway, really cool device. So that's $350, I think, right now. The Shift Wave is a chair. Think of those like nice lounge chairs at Costco that you can buy for like $150. So what they did, it's a little nicer than that, but they took a series of vibrational motors and put them from essentially not your head, but your neck down to your feet.
I have heard of that.
Yeah, you probably seen it. 8 to 10 of these motors. And what they induce is a sympathetic or parasympathetic response through, in my opinion, they're taking advantage of mechanoreceptors to kind of ramp you up or ramp you down. And what I love about the machine is that there's different protocols. And if you've never done breath work, and I said, hey, today we're doing breath work, or today we're doing sound therapy, and you're like, what the? I'm not doing that. Shift Wave takes care of that for you. So it kind of removes that, let's say, bias, and it takes you along for the ride, whether or not you're ready for that, if that makes sense. Okay. So it's kind of holding your hand. It's like if I said, hey, I want you excited. And you're like, well, I can't get excited. Okay, I'm going to put you on a roller coaster. Like you're going to get excited. So that's kind of how I interpret Shift Wave. This is a super valuable tool because if you're always, I'm thinking of specifically firefighters, shout out to Tempe Fire. I've had them on that device. I've taken every firefighter in Tempe Fire through that device. But if you're always walking around in this sympathetic state or quasi-sympathetic state, as you know, that's like normal, this can kind of help you. It's not about ramping you down. It's about teaching the body that it has an on-off switch, if that makes sense. Being able to switch. And I think that's what the value is, in my opinion.
Yeah, So is that the same thing? Is that giving you feedback, like real-time feedback of kind of where you are? Or
I love that because you don't have to, but it has a sensor for HRV. So the HRV is tied in with the device, but you don't. But I noted that she wasn't, shout out to Danny Rotman, who's repping Shiftwave, and Mike North, who's the founder. They weren't using HRV with the clients because it's just simpler, if you're in there and you're just demoing.
What does like a protocol look like then? So if you're introducing, so you said about the fire guys, if you're introducing them to this for the first time, like what would that look like?
So for me, it's a minimum effective dose. So for Shiftwave, I'm going to have them on now. I mean, I'm just name dropping them all over the place. When I had them on, I just needed 5 minutes. Now, the traditional protocol that they'll typically have, new, like if you were on the expo floor, they'll be at TSAC. They were last year anyway. That's probably where you remember. Oh, I don't know if you were there, but no, you weren't. We would have met up
before. Yeah, I think it was just virtual last year.
But anyway, they would have put you on for 10 minutes if you're like at an expo or something. But for me, I think 5 minutes is enough just to give you the idea of what is possible.
Okay.
And then there's different protocols. So there's the 5-minute demo protocol. There's the 10-minute demo protocol. They had me on something called neuropower or something like that, which got me amped up, which is what I did not need that. I have and I have seen some pretty fucking crazy shit as far as priming the nervous system, anecdotally, of course. But I was training, and maybe I should have this guy on too, an emergency medicine doctor who also works for National Geographic. On the side. What a fucking awesome life. But he was using a protocol called Ride the Tiger, which is, I think, a 90-minute. Yeah. So, and that's what I love about, like, you can tell where that's going. So 90 minutes Ride the Tiger. And that guy was fucking setting PRs every day, dude. It was fucking wild.
Okay.
Yeah. So that chair,
you would use like it's kind of becomes part of a daily protocol. Like if you had access to it.
If you had access to it. Yeah. So a lot of these people that I know of that own one, they'll do it every day.
Okay.
If you were at a place like Exos, I kind of let you decide because in my opinion, you're going to gravitate towards the methods that I've shown you that you think work for you. And that's what the most important thing is.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I would say for high threshold guys like Dr. Brzezicki, he walks around amped up. I remember he said, I think he said, you know how there's like A players? When I was going through medical school, I'm quoting what he said. When I was going through medical school, I was like A++++. I believe him, dude. I absolutely believe him. Yeah. So he was very extra. So he gravitated towards Ride the Tiger on his own. I didn't have to tell him to do that. He did it himself. So, and what was cool is like, you would see results from that. And here's the other cool thing that I love about the Shiftwave. For me, like, let's say they start publishing literature through, like, let's say more scientific leaning bodies. And they were like, it doesn't work. Like, fucking works. He thinks it works. It fucking works. He's setting PRs.
Placebo effect is a great effect.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So, and that's, for me, that's what I wanted. If you felt like, oh, I feel more at peace with myself, or man, I'm feeling amped right now, that was good enough for me. Put you in the right headspace.
Yeah. Well, a classic of that is, I don't know if you've seen it in the programming you've done, but we do, I think all of our standardized warm-ups now start off with that superhero breathing. So like the Dr. Amy Cuddy superhero pose. And there was like a whole shitstorm backlash of literature after she published that and presented it at TED saying, it's horseshit. It doesn't work. It like serum test wasn't measured properly and things like that. But like for everyone I'm probably going to get a barrage of emails now saying that they hate it, it doesn't have any effect. But anecdotally, everyone we've worked with that uses it feels more powerful and like more switched on and more ready to go. Like that's enough. I'll take that. Yeah. It doesn't need to be published in 10 peer-reviewed papers before we'll try something like that.
There's a whole discussion on the cynicism that people have. Like, it doesn't fucking work, And it's like, it's good enough, dude. It's good enough.
Yeah, and especially when the barrier for entry is so low. So something like a Shiftwave would be awesome, but I haven't got, do you say 10 grand?
10 grand.
Thinking of like the fire company I work for, like the budget we've got at the moment to re-up the gym is going to be like maybe $1,000 to do the whole gym. If
right.
This is a volunteer
and you're not going to spend it on a Shiftwave.
So we're not going to, unfortunately, we're not going to have many of those in the ready room. But yeah, something as an example, something like the superhero breathing, that is free and takes 30 seconds. Like, even if it just bumps you up a percentage point, I'll take it.
And one call out for Shiftwave is they do have a lot of breath work. So you wear headphones while you're using it and you do.
Also like full kind of sensory almost.
Yeah. Yes. So it's guided. That's the other thing I love about it is you don't have to, but it's encouraged to wear an eye mask and the headphones. Reason for that is if you think about it, now you're just kind of in with yourself. You can't get distracted with your cell phone or whatever. You're in the machine. You're on the road.
Yeah. And probably for, like you said, the guys who are A++s, people who are always on, like, or the equivalent in our world of that hypervigilance that you see, like always kind of like Yeah, always called spring. Almost it being enforced.
Enforced is a great way to put it.
Is kind of it's like almost a constraint-side approach. Like it constrains
Yes.
you enough so you can kind of invest in it.
And I would say, so and that's the other reason I use the 5-minute protocol, because if I said 10 minutes, if you think about the investment, the mental investment, it's like, okay, I got to set aside 10 minutes versus 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and then if they want to do it again, like, okay, we'll bump it up to 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would also, we've talked about this before, like with the zone 2 running, like well, maybe we haven't. So I deliberately go mountain biking and running without music. I try not to. Mountain biking, definitely not. But with running, I might use music because I'm like under recovered or whatever, and I need a little extra. But I will say for everyone listening, if you cannot run or train for an hour with silence, then I'd say that you got some stuff going on as far as like needing dopamine and that little boost. You should be able to do so without whenever you want. A great example of this is with the combine athletes when we would, now this is, I'm dating myself as far as when we started doing this, but when Nick Winkelman was in charge of the program, towards the end, he would take the music away when they were practicing their skill work on the field. And you can imagine a lot of them, you know, young men totally blasting the music in the gym, which I totally understand. And yes, encourage it, would get not upset. They'd be like, yo, coach, what's up with the music? When are we going to put music back on? And he'd say, no, because in the actual event, it will be completely silent.
Yeah.
And if it bothers you to train in silence, I'd say, well, you're being a pussy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think at the risk of kind of turning a lot of people off with this sounding hippie, for stuff like where you're trying to get outside, like the whole die living philosophy, we encourage so much people like kind of using their gym fitness, their gym credits to do cool stuff outside, be it climbing, open water swimming, surfing, whatever it is. And I think if you're limiting sound when you're in those kind of environments, like you're leaving a lot on the table. I think there's a lot to be gained from like being able to hear birds and stuff like that. I think it helps kind of plug you in.
Yes, that and just being with yourself instead of more input. Like now you have to, the other thing too, we did not talk about this, maybe we did, but I talk a lot about sleep and specifically the phenomenon where you're lying awake in bed at night and you can't turn your brain off. I would ask, is that the only quiet time you had that whole day?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Your brain wouldn't be, because you've been fucking putting shit in your system all fucking day.
It's trying to process it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know we're getting off topic, but I know you journal for that reason, don't you? Like that's your
Yes. Yep. That's my my deliberate quiet time. And I'm not saying I'm perfect and I journal every day, but yes, I'd spend a good deal. But also, here's the other nice thing is like if the journaling plus the running in silence, they kind of stack, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny, man, all this conversation, we've been talking for 24 minutes about this weird wellness resort experience. And this is not actually the subject I wanted to talk about as far as like specifically what was I teaching?
Yeah,
but this is great. This is all awesome. Yeah, this is good.
I guess what we can, maybe a kind of a segue back again, like I said before I derailed this.
No. This is fun.
What I'm really interested to hear is like more about this, like the setup and stuff like that. But I guess more ultimately is the application, like the bottom line. So what can we as normal people,
I love that.
What can we learn in our practice from what you experienced?
So I will say this. Yeah, because this was something I was thinking about a lot. It's like, okay, these people, they come here for the experience. Now everybody, and I should say this too, like you mentioned, it's like, oh, I thought they'd be hyper competitive. You would be surprised how many of these people are just like you and me. It's just for whatever reason, the dice rolled in their favor. I'm not saying it's luck, but luck is a bigger part of it. And then the reason I know that is because I've working at this level for as long as I have, so many of them are normal people. And it's more about, it's not that they're smarter than you. It's just that they got to the knowledge.
They're smarter than me.
Yeah. Well, so much of it is like, it's timing. They got to the knowledge first.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of that. It's like, oh, okay. Or, you know, their parents were already kind of learned a lot of lessons and they imparted those, like institutional knowledge. Like I was the first kid in my whole family, extended family, to go to college. My parents had no fucking clue as far as like how that all worked. And no, you need to look at STEM, etc. Hence why I'm in the fucking coaching industry. But lack of institutional knowledge. Well, personal training, that sounds fun. Like if my dad was a fucking PhD, you're like, hey, maybe take a look over here. You know, some other stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so what did you teach? What were your classes?
Well, let me explain what so let me write that down, class first. but let me finish this little point here. So what were these people doing? They were spending and taking time out of their lives to focus on their own wellness and mental well-being. And when I say intensely, they took enough out of their, let's say, schedule, so to speak, to go somewhere and disconnect from the real world. For example, one thing I loved about this resort is just like in, like, let's say a hospital setting, like you have a smoking area, or in the Marine Corps, at least, I don't know what it's like now, but you had a smoking area in the Marine Corps. They had a cell phone area. So you could not, you could not like walk around and talk on your phone or text. You were encouraged to go to these cell phone areas, and the cell phone areas were very deliberately placed to not be like distracting to people. So there was one thing. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is because if you have in your budget, when I say budget, I'm not just talking financial, I'm talking time budget, I'm talking familial, your career, etc., to go somewhere and just fucking disconnect, you should. You know, I think there's worth time like to fucking go to a different fucking planet, so to speak, for a little bit. So I had the opportunity to go, when I did my plant medicine journey, Puerto Vallarta, 6 days without a phone being taken care of. I know it didn't cost $1,800 a night for that. So like, I think that's within reach of normal people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going on
even,
go ahead.
Again, kind of a nod back to the die living stuff. Even like if you do like a micro adventure, like you go somewhere, you go camp out for a night in the week, or you like go off onto a trail. I mean, we get it organically here. Like you go out into the forest and there's no cell phones. So you're away. You kind of get that forced disconnect. But yeah, even if I know that particularly here in the States, like the ability to take leave and take time off work is hard. Like you don't get weeks and weeks a year to go off. We're pretty fortunate in that the model is a little bit different at home. But like, yeah, if you can, rather than doing something like absolutely mental where you go and climb a mountain over 2 weeks, just do like short kind of exposures, like work out what's going to be, I kind of am reluctant to say minimum effective dose because I don't think it should be quite as clinical as that, but what's going to be achievable for you, like both financially and from a time perspective, like you said, considering those resources, but allow you to get some disconnect. And that's not going to feel the same as going to Nepal or somewhere like that, or going to South America. But if you can just get out to like local, like state, national parks, forests, whatever, and just spend some time there, that's going to be exponentially better than not going. And then like kind of the more time and money you can invest in that.
Keep in mind, this was in Tucson, so I know that not that I'm going to stay there.
Yeah.
My son, so that was another thing. They don't allow children there. So my son had to stay in a different hotel. But like I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I could see myself taking my son and my wife down to this other hotel, Hacienda del Sol, which was very nice. It was a women's school back in the 1929 is when it was founded. But very nice place. So it had me thinking, oh, I can't afford to go to a place like Canyon Ranch, but I can do something like this. And it's funny too. They were like, oh, are you going to sign up for yoga and get a massage? And the other thing no, I'm not going to do those things. But they also had the Immortal red light therapy bed, which is $150,000. They had like two other, I know it's crazy, dude. They had two shift waves. That's not including the shift wave team that came out and brought two more. They had other red light beds. They had some kind of sexy looking foot analysis thing for running footwear. Odd Pod, which is fucking crazy, and a DEXA scan. Like, why do you have both? Crazy.
His bod pod, I'm intrigued. I haven't touched the bod pod since my undergrad, so that would have been like 2007, 2008. Has it like? I remember like you had to like shave down, wear a swimming hat, and all this kind of. Is it still like that, or is it evolved?
It is. Yeah, that's funny. I asked the same thing, and they said it's still the same. So, if you guys have access to a bod pod versus a DEXA, I would just get a DEXA. So the reason Exos went away from ultrasound. Ultrasound was a body comp measure, and Exos was starting to use, and they still do it because it's kind of easy and accessible, because a DEXA scan requires an X-ray tech in some states.
Oh, okay.
But they had DEXA scan machines. So that's kind of, in my opinion, like that's probably what I would do, because you don't have to do weird stuff. Like hold your, I can't remember. Don't you have to like exhale your breath or something in the bod pod? I can't remember.
Maybe it's like scary. It's almost like 20 years ago at this point. And I've not been anywhere where they had one since.
I'm sure there's people who are like, what the fuck is a bod pod? A bod pod is a body composition measure. So it measures body fat through air displacement. Because if you think about it, muscle versus fat is, I hate using this word, softer. So the air pressure will they calculate how much air you displace, and they know the ratio of muscle to fat as far as like, how fat are you? How soft, how fluffy are you? So yeah, you have to sit in this airtight chamber and there's air inside. It's just not like, yeah. And then DEXA is an x-ray machine essentially.
And so you said people had access to that?
To both, yeah.
And are they like guided through this, like kind of a pre-test, post-test, or is it sort of
I'm
on
glad you brought that
them
up.
to, like...
Yeah, they had 2 or 3 practitioners, directors of sports science or performance science, I think is what they called it.
Okay.
Because sport, for the people like that are going to that, I'll tell you this. So like of the people I taught, that was not the average person that was there. Like there was a lot of people that could have benefited from coming to my classes, but they never, that's too hard. You know what I mean? Like they want to be pampered.
Yeah. And I guess if you're dropping that amount of money a night, like...
I think there's that aspect
you want what you want.
Why would I work?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'll pay for the massage therapist to do that for me. But the whole point of my class was the opposite of that. So let's take that into like, what the fuck was I teaching? So I guess I could say Therabody. Therabody sent me down there and I taught 3 percussive therapy classes. Okay. So what to do with a Theragun. And we ran through like, the SOP as far as what is a Theragun, how to fucking turn it on, the basics like that. Just essentially, I would say driving home the idea of accessibility. So it's not practical for me to be in the airport with my fly with my massage therapist and they have a table with them. That's not realistic. I'm sure for some of those people, maybe. But I was thinking about, I want people to realize that, like, yes, exactly. There's people here taking this thing where I'm like, nah, that's probably not, I would not fly in a public airport.
Yeah.
But that's the example, because that's my example. And it's like, I don't know, like, what your situation, you probably have a whole team of massage therapists that take care of you. One for the foot and one for the calf and one, so anyway. So just showing them, like, from an accessibility standpoint, like, you want to do it in the morning, like, you don't have to set a schedule. You have it right there and then. Also teaching them the concept of tying that in with, there's that notion of, I just want to feel good and get a massage therapist to make me feel better in that moment. But it's the movement that you have to attach to that massage, that intervention, to make it sticky. So let's say for me, I tore my rotator cuff when I was in the Marine Corps. So my right upper quarter, that means my trap, my neck, my shoulders, rotator cuff, lat, pec, all those things are not working as pain-free as they could. So I will spend time ramping my upper quarter tone down and doing something on top of that to kind of make sure that I stay closer to that, let's say, baseline. Versus, let me get that all relaxed and just do nothing. It's going to go back to getting irritated again because I haven't given it context to be like, no, you should be moving it like this. So a lot of motion movement to address upper body mechanics and lower body mechanics. If I had to be simplistic, thinking about the rotator cuff and the role of rotator cuff with phasic versus tonic muscles, so muscles that are large like the pec major and muscles that are small like the subscapularis, and the musculature of the hip girdle, so 6 to 8 different muscles that stabilize the hip, or the femur rather, in the hip. It's about understanding how to ramp those larger muscles down to expose the hip girdle, to expose the rotator cuff, to get that stickiness, so to speak. That's what the class was about. Yeah. So attaching, we're going to do soft tissue and upper quarter. Now we're going to do some extension drills for the spine. We're going to do some thoracic rotation drills for the spine. So that was the class that I taught.
Makes sense. I think like one of the, again, kind of at the risk of derailing this and taking it off somewhere else, but like that's something that I saw a lot in the rehab world. So I came through sports science, strength conditioning, then specialized in rehab in the military. And I've kind of, obviously with Softly, have come back into kind of the strength conditioning world. But one of the things I noticed early in rehab was there's this huge push to, if you've got like excess tone, if something, we'll say like your low back or your neck, like your trap, if something's high tone, if something's kind of like not cramped necessarily, but is
angry.
Yeah, you've got some kind of tension there. I still see so much in kind of popular media of just, we'll just kind of stretch it, try and loosen it off, full stop or period. But like exactly like you're saying, that's almost like taking the when you have like a check engine or a warning light coming on in your car and just like taping your coloring over it and then just carrying on. Or driving.
Even just, going to AutoZone and getting the OBD sensor and then resetting your check engine light. It's going to pop up again. That's a great analogy. Yeah, and like your body's pretty smart. Like if you've got increased tone somewhere, it's for a reason. It's not just random. So if you're it's almost like a safety mechanism, like in the car, like the lights coming on. So if you're overriding that
like to your point, without putting something in its place, without kind of teaching stability through maybe a different way. Yeah, I think you're really setting yourself up for dramas down the line, especially if you're like in our world that's kind of highly kinetic, and often like 0 to 60 is rapid. So you're going from kind of baseline, maybe sitting in a patrol car or something like that, to max intensity. There's no time for that. Like, okay, I've just got to like warm up a little bit. I've got to get going. So I think, yeah, teaching that is class. That's great. The fact that it's not just like, okay, well, it feels better, it feels less tight. That's the end of the story. There's got to be a so what to it. So yeah, that's cool.
Yes. So a couple things. So what that's going to go lead into is what I wanted to really talk about was instrument-assisted soft tissue mobilization techniques and the different methods out there. And to make it sticky. So first, another thing that I drove home with the audience, well, on this podcast, but also in the classes, was that generally you're going to start to see tissue change for 70 to 90 seconds. After 70 to 90 skepticism. You're going to start to see tissue change after 70 to 90 seconds of input. So if you look at the literature right now, and as far as our understanding of hypertrophy and increasing size, it's really more about mechanical tension and reaching a point of muscular failure where mechanical tension is maximized. But for a very long time, it was understood that to improve IGF signaling, growth hormone signaling, and a more, let's say, chemically beneficial environment for hypertrophy, you want 70 to 90 seconds worth of stimulus. So it goes with improving mobility and making it stickier. So a great example I bring up is like bending over to touch our toes. Like, this, we just explained it. Like if we don't touch our toes, if we're not able to, and we just bent over and worked on it for the next 10 minutes, yes, you would be able to, but it's not sticky. So generally the minimum is 70 to 90 seconds worth of work with breath to get that change. And then we, as you noted, stabilize to get it to stay.
I think that's still, it scares me how that's still often like left off the conversation.
I think, dude, I'm getting deja vu. I feel like we talked about this before. But anyway, so another thing, skepticism. So cupping therapy, scraping, active release technique, dry needling, K-tape, percussive therapy, all these methods, when you look at literature, says that it does not induce tissue change over time, which if I want to rage bait and get engagement on social media, then I'll say, well, this is a waste of time. This doesn't work. Of course, every fucking Olympic cycle, there's some fucking practitioner out there that posts Michael Phelps or whoever the fucking hot ticket athlete is at the time. Look, they got cupping. Cupping doesn't work. It's bullshit. Then why do all the fucking pros do it? Every fucking cycle, dude. If it didn't fucking work, why do they all do it for, like, it's been a long fucking time. If it didn't work, it would have fucking well fell to the wayside. So anyway, the reason I bring this up, it's all input into the nervous system. One of the strongest, let's say, arguments, in my opinion, and we'll have to bring Jess Ellis on to talk about, I think it's Bernoulli's principle of fluid dynamics, but it's physics. So Boyle's law of pressure differential means that areas of high pressure must flow to low. That's just the way of the fucking world, okay? So if I'm pressing down on an area that has a lot of inflammation in it, I'm manipulating the amount of pressure in that area. I will inevitably affect flow because I'm applying pressure. So there's a couple things to talk about there, but with percussive therapy, scraping, ART, those things are compressive in nature. So let us think what's happening there. With K-tape and cupping, those are decompressive because they're pulling layers apart. So for me, let's say you're dealing with knee pain and around the tissue around your knee has a lot of interstitial fluid and you're just dealing with knee pain or even soreness, muscular soreness. This putting pressure, or rather your nociceptors are getting signaled. Nociceptors are receptors responsible for signaling pain. So this is why it's uncomfortable. Well, by applying these different methods, be it compressive or decompressive in nature, you manipulate the amount of fluid in the area, and that's going to reduce the amount of, I want to say, pressure on the nociceptor. At the same time, the other cool thing with these methods that I appreciate, especially with percussive therapy, is that, well, the analogy I always bring up is, let's say it's the middle of the night, it's 2 a.m., you need water, so you go to the fridge, you wake up, all the lights are off, you bang your shin on the coffee table on your way over there. We've all done something like that, right? The first thing you do, think of Family Guy, Peter Griffin, is grab your shin. And the reason you do that is because putting pressure on the site of injury turns on, or rather sends a signal to mechanoreceptors for a change in pressure. That causes what's called interference with nociceptors. They do not talk well at the same time. So you put your hand there because you feel less pain. So it is with some of these compressive methods, like the percussive therapy, it's sending a lot of fucking signal through mechanoreceptors. So if you're dealing with pain, it reduces that. A great example of this, if I had everybody, and some of the listeners will understand, soft tissue massage on your TFL, on your pec minor, on your middle delt, on your trap, can be fucking nasty with a trigger point ball. If you don't know what that is, like if you had a sports massage and they find that spot that really fucking sucks, they are applying pressure, but there's a lot of discomfort and pain there. Because it's percussive, it kind of causes too much interference, and you don't get that discomfort, which is pretty undervalued in my opinion. So I guess that's my soapbox, is like, I can't fucking stand when I read it's every fucking year, oh, this doesn't work. Like, it fucking works. Going back to our point around like superhero breathing, if it works for that person. Here's the other thing. What's the downside? There isn't one.
Yeah. I think so. The only thing I would countering that is that's not kind of what I'm trying to get at. I think the only thing with that kind of stuff is it sort of almost all boils down to threat. Like, does the nervous system find whatever that stimulus is threatening, like threatful, if you like? And I think the only time you can come unstuck with that stuff. Completely agree with you. I think, like, again, we've kind of talked about like placebo effect is an effect if it works for you, and that's where having like really solid objective data is great. If you can jump higher, sprint faster, if your grouping's tighter, whatever that is for you, following that protocol, sweet, you ride that train. That's awesome. But the only time you kind of come unstuck a little bit, in my experience, is in the West, and particularly in the tactical culture. More is always better. Like, if a little bit of something
I'm writing
makes
right now.
improve my performance, then
I'm writing
10x
Eastern.
of that.
Yep, I'm writing Eastern versus Western right here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's magnified in the subculture that is like military first response, like, just because of how we are, like your A++ guys. So that's where, like, again, it's about finding that minimum effective dose. So going in with that mentality, like, what's the least amount of dry needling, of massage, of whatever, to get the positive effect, because your nervous system is kind of designed, it's not designed for performance, it's designed to stop you dying.
Yes.
So if you give it too much stimulus, that's not going to, think of it like a bell curve, like inverted U. Too much isn't going to be a good thing. You're going to see probably quite a dramatic drop off. And it's at that point people are like, well, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It does. It's just talking about the dose.
Yes. So that's the other thing. Everybody's going to respond differently. So for me, if you cup differently in different areas, if you cup my upper neck, or just my neck in general, my upper traps is what I meant to say, I get a really strong response, and I'm going to get that bruising no matter what. We could keep the cups on there for just 30 seconds and I'm going to get a pretty dramatic response. We're not chasing that. If you put those cups in my quads, I take pretty good care of my quads, and you don't see that. So there's that aspect. Okay, so it's going to change depending on the zone. But the other thing, so I mentioned Eastern versus Western, and you said more is not better. You are not fighting with your nervous system. The Eastern approach is very much, let's fight the nervous system. Let's blast it into submission. You can do that, but the blowback you're going to get from that is very dramatic. So this is where with cupping, you're looking, and scraping, because these come from Eastern cultures, we're looking for tissue change right then and there. And what I mean by that is like blood. They're looking for something called petechiae, and that's where you're creating this bruising on purpose. And the argument is, and by the way, no, Matt and I did not say removing toxins from the body. No, that's what your liver is for. Okay. No, we're looking at what's happening inside that tissue locally. So I would say if you walk, you should always feel better engaging in that chosen method, whatever it is, especially after you leave. You should not feel fucking smoked. If you feel smoked or fried, you fried your nervous system. That's going to have, in my opinion, negative consequences on your trajectory as far as your training goes. So that's something to be aware of. I'll give you a great example. I had dry needling done by a practitioner that used to work at Exos, and it was for my rotator cuff, and he was battling my nervous system, and it was fucking nasty, dude. It was the hardest dry needling session I've ever had in my life. I was sore for 2 weeks. So the next time it came around where someone wanted to dry needle my rotator cuff because I was having issues, I actually had like a fucking response, dude, a physiological response. And I was like super anxious. And then it was a complete opposite experience. And guess what? We had the same result. And not from a soreness standpoint. I mean, from I feel better standpoint. So we got to where we needed much faster with less of the drama. So I would encourage, and here's the other thing. I would encourage you guys. Now, I'm saying this as if it's being done to you. If you and I, listener, were to work together, I'm going to teach you how to do this stuff to yourself, because no one's going to understand your body better than you. And use your judgment. Rule number 3, don't have a stupid story to tell. So I heard a story about one of the dudes down in Florida going through the accelerated return to duty program, taking a cupping set home and falling asleep with the cups on his pec. Bad fucking idea. Yeah. So generally, yeah. Generally speaking, you want no more than, when it comes to cups, I would say 5 minutes is very long. So 3 to 5 minutes. You can get a response. And Matt, back to your point, I can get a response in as little as 30 seconds. And that might be enough. I forgot to mention too, another method, Voodoo Band or Mobility Band. Fucking great. I love that tool. It's input into the nervous system. I'm giving it different context. A great example of this, or let's say analogy to help understand why we even do these things. If I put a rock in your shoe and I told you to walk for a mile, you'd be able to figure it out. Probably walk a little funny, but you'd be able to figure it out. Just because, and you probably would towards that end of that mile, not have to think about it as much because you figured it out. If we took the rock out of your shoe after that first mile and told you to walk another mile, you would not walk perfect. It would take conscious control to walk back, like walk normally again. So for whatever reason, when it comes to pain and the way we move through space, like it's always this afterthought. Like this is an opportunity to give the body some context, the Voodoo Band, the K-tape, whatever, to kind of act as a heads up that it's time for a change versus doing what you were doing before. So I can't remember what model I just described there, but that's a model of motor program theory. Anyway, what am I missing? What questions, if any?
So you were talking about your sessions. Did you go through, have you been through all 3 of the, did you say it was 3 different sessions you taught?
3 of the same. 3 of the same sessions.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm
so I taught different people and we hit the same shapes every time. I'd say, if you're wondering, like, well, what did you do? We hit trap, we hit trap, we hit lat, we hit pec, we hit pec minor, we hit the sternal head of the pec, medial deltoid, we hit, or middle deltoid. We hit the forearm, we hit the bicep. That was for upper body. Lower body, we hit. Now, you were lengthening everything. So that's related to the therapy called active release technique. So there's a type of passive therapy where you're just moving up and down. Cupping is similar. Cupping, you can be static and just have the cup there, or you can lube up the zone and then move the cup around, or you can move tissue while that cup is static. So what I mean by moving tissue is like right now I'm raising my hand and lowering my hand and I'm imagining a cup on my trap. But we did a lot of that. So you would have the gun on your trap and I would have you raise or actually elevate, shrug, don't shrug. If you're hitting your lat, you're raising your hand in class, lowering your hand. A pec minor, same thing. A sternal head of the pec, you're flying through the air. So giving the body context and giving them so think about, I say context because now you're telling the body, hey, I need this area of my pec minor to relax from a pain standpoint because it has to move as well. And so you think about that from a long-term standpoint versus just sitting there. We're not giving it context. Yeah. So that was the upper body. And then we tie that in with shin box variations and a glute bridge with extension, thoracic extension. So you're lying on the ground, you go in a hip extension, you're going to take one hand and reach over and across above your opposite armpit. And you're going to reach with your opposite hand underneath you towards the opposite ankle. We're getting a lot of thoracic extension and rotation that way. We also did 90-90 variations with active stability. And then what was the last one? For the hip, as I said, shin box variations and a half kneeling lift off. So you're in a half kneeling position. You spike the back toe. You shift your weight forward. This is good to bring up. So a number of students that were participating, I would show them, shift your weight forward. I'm in a half kneeling position. Knee barely off the mat, rotate over the forward leg, come back to center and lower. And a lot of people struggled with that. In my opinion, that's a basic human task. Everyone should be able to get in that split pelvis position, half kneeling, and pick up your knee off the mat. Now, if you're listening, like, I can't do that. That's okay. Start with shifting your weight forward and loading that front leg. And then over time, you can see, eventually, if I keep doing this, I'll be able to bring that right knee, or not right knee, but the knee that's down off the mat. When you bring the knee off the mat, lower is better. So for men, I usually say, imagine knee hair brushing the mat, right? Okay. So versus like coming up and now you're in this quasi-split stance. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we did. So if you think about the order of operations, soft tissue massage, mobility work, and then some kind of activation work to tie it all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's great. And I think there's a lot of take homes there for like, if you're trying to implement this kind of stuff in your own training as a listener, if you know that you're restricted or you're tight or you're like, we get those kind of questions a lot, like where do I go with that kind of stuff? Obviously we have the mobility team that is based around cycles that are structured as G suggested, where you're trying to increase range of motion, but then stabilize through it as well. I think that's kind of critical, particularly when so much of what we do operates at like end ranges of motion. So no, that's great. And what were people like? Generally pretty receptive to it?
Oh yeah, they loved it. Because again, I think a lot of people go in thinking, oh, I'm just going to lay here and then hit the tissue. And think about it, that's boring too, right?
Yeah.
That's only going to get certain people that love to feel pampered. That's the word that keeps coming to mind. And I think a lot of the audience probably they're not listening to this because they like that vibe. Like for me, I'm just saying this for myself. If you gave me a choice, like, Giovani, do you want a massage? Like when I went to Mexico, they gave me a massage. In my head, I'm thinking, oh, sports massage. Nah, it was a feel good. And it's like, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see why people like it, but it ain't for me. I need something more kinetic. I want to feel it, and that's where the sports massage comes in. Let's talk about that real quick. So cupping, scraping, massage. So just some different, let's say there's certain things obviously that I could, if we were face to face, listener, I could show you, to do with your significant other. But cupping and scraping, I would encourage you to seek out Kelly Starrett's work. So the Ready State, I'm sure his older stuff is still on. Yeah, he's still on YouTube. I encourage you to check out some of these tools. The best tools I've ever used. I have zero idea of the state of where this company is at. But my favorite tools came from Rock Tape. Yeah, their tools are fucking great. But I don't know where they're at on that. And they had, let's say, a practitioner price, and it was expensive. It was like $600. So I don't know where they're at with that. You can, in a pinch, you can use a credit card or the back of a butter knife. It doesn't have to be this super sexy tool because we're just looking for a response. You need to use lube. Use your lube of choice. I'm not going to tell you what kind. Let's see. The cupping kits. So Therabody actually has some pretty dope kits. Like, I wish I thought of this. It's incredible technologies. And they use capacitors. So semiconductors, I should have said. I was saying capacitors. That kind of works. But they act as a heat pump. So heat is going to move to one side of the device. So that means that if one side is really, really hot, which it can get really, really hot, the other side's got to be really, really cold. Again, it's using physics. Well, they have these little cups that have these little conductors in them that do that. They add heat or they add cold. It's fucking genius.
Oh, cool.
Or I think they even vibrate. So think about that again from a context standpoint. If I've been doing all my soft tissue stuff.
Neural input.
Yes, neural input. So I think it's super ingenious. However, it only comes with two. So whereas a traditional kit used to cost like $30, but now they're probably like 60. So that's depressing. They can be messy, but they totally work. You also have access to silicone cups. Silicone cups I love because you don't have this huge thing that you have to carry around, and they're flexible. And there's different levels of pressure, which I won't go into because that's a little specific. But sometimes people think the silicone cups aren't strong enough, and it's because that's a skill issue. There's a way to make it really strong. So just know that if you've heard somebody say, I don't think they work, they're doing it wrong. I'm saying it with 100% confidence. I can say that with confidence. They're doing it wrong. What else? Scraping, we talked about that. I know
you already mentioned this in terms of like, if you've watched or listened to anything I've ever said, I'm proper like cheap as fuck. Like I'm trying to get everything, trying to be able to do as much as you can with as little as possible in terms of kind of financial or resource outlay, because that's the kind of came from big military. We didn't get even though we had aircrew, we didn't generally get the bottomless budgets, and now volunteer fire. So that's just kind of the world I live in. Voodoo floss or even kind of like the off-brand stuff. So like way back in the day, before you could get a lot of that kind of stuff in the UK, I remember getting road bike inner tubes and cutting them open and using stuff like that.
And then one thing to really drive home there, road tubes for a long time were made with real rubber, latex. Natural. When I say real, I mean natural. So from a tree. I bring that up because there's a tackiness that you can get with from a tree, latex, versus synthetic. The synthetic ones are cheaper to make and they're not as tacky. So meaning it doesn't grab itself as well. But yes, 100% bicycle tube totally works.
I'd say like I don't know if you're really at a push the inner tubes, but like this kind of stuff's so cheap now. We only use that because you couldn't get it.
Right.
Like the cost of shipping stuff. Like I think it was Voodoo Floss back then, like when Kelly Stewart first did it.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of shipping it was more than the cost of the stuff. But yeah, things like that. I think bang for buck.
And then pro tip, yes, 100%. Pro tip for the Voodoo Floss or Mobility Floss. In my opinion, go grab the extra big roll from Rogue and cut it in half, because then you can hit 2 legs at the same time, full length. Not full length hip to toe, but rather your quad. You can hit both quads at the same time.
Yeah.
And then also another pro tip. This is like fucking really like, I see professional PTs get this wrong. Okay. So like this is a fucking hardcore tip for you guys. When you are using Voodoo Floss and you're wrapping around, let's say your bicep or let's say your quad. Okay. The amateur, I should say not amateur, but the person who is not as well seasoned will wrap it all the way around. And then you're going to pull the end of the portion that you wrap to tuck the slack in, right? To finish off the wrap. When you do that, if you're a man, you're going to pull a lot of leg hair. The pro move is instead of going that far, shorten up the area that you're hitting so that when you go to wrap it, you can just pull on the Voodoo Floss itself and tuck it into the Voodoo Floss. You don't have to touch your skin. Now you don't have to pull your hair. Yeah. So
there's also this may get chopped from the final recording. There's a ton of potential for the BFR stuff, like in the field, but we can't, as a company, advocate you doing that. So you absolutely should not use Voodoo Floss for BFR. You shouldn't do it. I'm kind of tongue in cheek. There is definitely some risks to that in terms of like blood clotting and things like that.
Yes. And I would say it's unnecessary
lying if I said
most.
I didn't do it personally.
I would be lying as well. I have gone on the Versa Climber for extended amounts of time with both quads wrapped.
And I have to say, having said that, I'm really sorry, Ryan. I hope that kind of I hope that's enough of a legal get out of jail card for us.
Right. Yeah, and now you have, as far as BFR, perhaps we can bring on a practitioner and talk more about that too on a separate cast. But I think it's unnecessary to take your Voodoo Floss and do BFR in the field. I think
nowadays, I think there's so much more that's kind of available. It's so much more accessible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a whole nother episode. Like that as a tool is for our population is crazy cool. There's some really good potential there.
I think, for sure. It's underutilized. For someone who's busted, I think they should have BFR in their, let's say, regular rotation, just because it can help with things. All right, man. I feel like this is, any last thoughts?
No, so you talked through.
Oh, hold on.
Kind of
Hey guys. Okay. I know I talked about the mega elite. Okay. I'm doing very well mentally. Okay. So if you don't hear from me, okay, I'm going to let you put 2 and 2 together. I talked a lot of shit about super ultra rich elite people. I want to keep working and publishing episodes here on the Softly podcast. So just know that. All right. I don't know if that, don't hurt me.
I think that's a wrap right there. That's perfect.
Okay. Awesome. Hey, die living, but hopefully not for a while.
And with all your organs intact.